I was reading this book, Christmas, A History by Judith Flanders, and I came across a passage that I just had to share with you. Victorian Christmas could be an incredibly elaborate affair for the upper classes, but what was it like for those who were not so lucky? How about the house servants? Well, let me read you a short passage from the 1863 diary of a maid-of-all-work in London, Hannah Cullwick. On the 23rd of December, Hannah wrote, "I got up early and lighted the kitchen fire to get it up soon for the roasting, a turkey and 8 fowls for tomorrow, being Christmas Eve, and 40 people's expected, and they're going to have a sort of play. I'm very busy indeed all day and worried too with the breakfast and the bells ringing so, and such a deal to think about as well as work to do. I cleaned 2 pairs of boots and the knives, washed the breakfast things up, cleaned the passage and shook the doormat. Got the dinner and cleaned away after, keeping the fire well up and minding the things that were roasting and basting them until I was nearly sick with the heat and the smell. We laid the kitchen cloth and had our supper and cleaned away after. I took the ham and pudding up at 12 o'clock, made the fire up and put another on, and then to bed. Came down again at 4, the fire wanted stirring and more coals on, and when I had got the pudding boiling again, I went to bed till after 6. Got up and dressed myself then, and cleaned the tables and hearth and got the kettle boiling, and so began. It's just never-ending work in a hot kitchen, and it's not even Christmas Eve yet. Note that she says that she's worried, so it's not just physical labor, it's the mental load. She cleans boots, knives, mats, gets dinner, cleans it away, and then the physical toll hits. After not much sleep, Hannah is ready to start working again. So, on the 24th of December, she writes, "After breakfast, I cleaned a pair of boots and lighted the fires upstairs, swept and dusted the room and the hall, laid the cloth for breakfast and took it up when the bell rang. Put the beef down to roast, cleaned the knives, made the custards and mince pies, got the dinner up, cleaned away after and washed up in the scullery. Cleaned the kitchen tables and hearth, made the fire up again and filled the kettle. We had supper in the kitchen and then I dished up for the parlour. Mr. Saunderson came and spoke to our servants and was going to shake hands, but I said, 'My hands are dirty, sir.' After supper was over, the master had the hot mince pie up, with a ring and sixpence in it. They had good fun over it. We had no fun downstairs. All was very busy till 4 o'clock, and then to bed." So, they had good fun over it upstairs. We had no fun downstairs. That is the Victorian Christmas in a nutshell. So, not exactly a fun Christmas Eve. How about Christmas itself? Let's see what Hannah did on the 25th of December. Got up at 8 and lit the fires. Took the carpet up and shook it and laid it down again in the dining room. Rubbed the furniture and put straight. Had my breakfast. Cleaned a pair of boots. Washed the breakfast things up and the dishes. Cleaned the front steps. Took the breakfast upstairs. Got the dinner and filled the scuttles. The family went up the hill for the evening, and I cleaned myself to go and see my sister Ellen. But I had such a headache and felt so tired and sleepy, I sat in a chair and slept till 5, and then had tea and felt better. Had a little supper and home again, and to bed at 10. Hannah Cullwick's diary for these days is essentially a list of everything she did, and of course it's fair to assume that she did loads of other tasks too. For a woman like Hannah, working as a maid-of-all-work in mid-Victorian London meant devoting nearly every waking hour to domestic labour. The notion of a maid-of-all-work was common when a family could afford few or only a single servant, instead of hiring separate staff for cooking, cleaning, laundry, boots, fires, etc. In such households, that one servant had to combine the tasks of kitchen maid, housemaid, and scullery maid. For Hannah, the long grinding process of lighting fires, cleaning boots, cooking, washing up, all of that, polishing, etc., that would have been a typical workload for a general servant in a modest but self-reliant household. Isabella Beeton's famous household manual called this the most fatiguing and trying position of all. And Hannah's diary proves it. While the family upstairs enjoyed the magic of Christmas, Hannah was the engine room that kept it running, invisible, exhausted, and smelling of roast turkey and coal dust. Hannah's lived reality also reflects the larger scale of domestic service in Victorian England. Domestic service was the largest single employer of women in Britain during the 19th century. Servants slept and worked below stairs, often in cramped, modest quarters, tucked away in attics, basements, or service wings, away from the family's living and entertaining spaces. And I think that's something that a series like Downton Abbey depicts very well, although it's set in a later period, and it's of course a very idealized representation of this lifestyle. Working hours were long, often from before dawn until well after dark, with very little time for rest, recreation, or privacy. In fact, the day after Christmas was traditionally the servants' real holiday. That's why we call the 26th Boxing Day. It was when most servants received their Christmas boxes from employers, and they were finally allowed to go home to their own families. This diary shows that domestic service, while pervasive, was not comfortable or genteel. For many young women of the working classes, service offered relative security compared to factory or field labor, but at the price of long hours, hard manual work, little privacy, and a life always on call. Hannah's own words and the broader historical record reveal a world in which Christmas for domestic servants was not a holiday at all, but simply one more day in an endless cycle of work. So, next time you feel stressed out about cooking one Christmas dinner, spare a thought for Hannah Cullwick. She made the season bright for everyone else, even if she slept through her own holiday.